I mean to scare anybody, I apologize. My name is Paul Snyder, I'm the General Manager of Morimoto Asia. I just wanted to welcome you to Sake 101. And I wanted to introduce Eduardo Dingler. He's the Corporate Beverage Manager for Morimoto Group. He's also the guy who put together our beverage menu and consulted with it and continues to consult with it. We found him to be an amazing resource, not only through his knowledge but through his passion for what he studies and what he does. He's not somebody who goes by textbook. He goes by what he feels in his blood and what he feels is right, and he believes in education and he believes in bringing the staff up to a level to where they love what they do as well, as opposed to making them just know what's in the book. So I really hope you enjoy what he's going to prepare for you, and enjoy your food as well. Right? Enjoy.
Thank you, Paul. That's quite an introduction. Actually, that's like talking a little too much. I really enjoy. That's a fact. I enjoy what I do, and I hope everybody can hear me. Sometimes I'm not as loud, and sometimes I'm too loud. I'm really happy to be here all the way from California. I couldn't refuse the opportunity to go meet you guys and enjoy a little warm weather while I'm here, since we're getting a little cold up there. And as I always tell my staff, it's knowledge is power. And once you have the knowledge, you understand a product, beverage, food, whatever it is, and want to have that fever to share it with somebody. That's the key to everything you do, right? That doesn't feel like a job, it feels like something really enjoyable. Being that said, we're here to talk about sake and some of the food and the pairings, which is one of the things I love the most. As you can see, we started with the sake cocktail, because sake it's obviously we treat it with a lot of respect. It's a labor of passion, a lot of love, just like making wine or any other spirit or whatnot. But it also is playful, and it doesn't have to be very formal and really straightforward. You can mix it up with cocktails depending on the sake it is, so as you can still taste it. In this one, I hope you enjoyed it, but to me this is a fun play on the French 75. Has a little zing to it, the acid, you get a little sweetness from the plum wine, and you get you taste the sake itself. So it's pretty fun. So, leaving today, and the main reason to be here is to learn a little bit about sake. We'll talk about what sake is, what it's not, how it's progressed throughout the years, hundreds of years that it's been in production, some of the regions in Japan, all the ingredients that go into it. And I want it to be just like I do a show that's a monthly live stream on tootsuite.com, that it's more about friends and showing what sake is and talking about it rather than a class. Because in most times, who really wants to sit down in a classroom, right? We did that back when we were young in school. Now it's supposed to be enjoyable and fun and still learn something while you're getting to know. It's like knowing a new group of friends, just like tonight, for me at least. So we'll start with that. Sake, and please feel free to stop me at any point. I might talk too fast, or my English sometimes can be a little too confusing, but I'm here all night. So sake is made of 4 ingredients. And the sake has been produced for, as we said, a few hundreds of years. Somebody one day figured out, just like with wine, oh wow, we can ferment this, it'll go through a process, and we drink it and we have a party. It helps us socialize, help us really enjoy ourselves and the people around us. And it tastes good at the end of the day. So sake is made right now out of 4 ingredients mainly. I say 4 loosely because there's a 5th one, just like the Beatles. Used to have a 5th Beatle every once in a while. Same idea. So the 4 ingredients are rice, and rice is very important. It gives a lot of the texture to the sake. There's a few strains of rice you might hear about, or you might be aware more now after you taste a few sakes. There's Yamada Nishiki, which is the father of all. There's Omachi. There's Goemon-yaku. There's Haya Nishiki. There's a few of those, right? And you'll hear them, and actually when you go to the store, the whole goal, go to a store or a restaurant, look at a bottle and say, wow, this is Omachi rice, it's going to be like this. And your friends are going to learn from you, and it's going to be something that's going to make you feel good, right? Maybe one day when your kids are old enough, you'll teach them a little bit about it. Alright, that's my goal, with my kids at least. So there's the rice, and it gives a lot of the texture, right? Different prefectures and regions in Japan have different rice that they're made their own, and they say, almost like with wine, right? Burgundy, it's only Pinot Noir and Champagne, and Chardonnay. So Yamada Nishiki, it's mostly of the northern style. And we'll go on that, all right? And please do feel free to stop me and ask. Water, it's a very big influence in sake. And water, you have a few different things that affect the minerality of the water. So you want the richness. In the south of Japan, you get a lot of minerality because of volcanic soils or wells, and you get the weight in the palate, almost like a richer style of wine. And also, at the same time in the north, Akita, Niigata, Hokkaido, all the snow transforms into the water, and it's very lean and clean. And it's very delicate, softer, so if you ever see a sake from north, you can almost assume it's going to be a velvety, feminine style. So, wow. You try them side by side, we'll try a few today, and you'll get your own perception on what you like and enjoy. And that way when you see one, you can say, oh, I like this style, I'm gonna try this one tonight, or depends on what you're eating. But, being that said, a few of you are out of cocktails, so let's pour some of the sake while we we'll talk about the styles of sake, but at the same time, a very unorthodox sake style we're going to start with. This is not something that you see every day, but we figured with the menu, with the fun crowd that we have in the restaurant, this makes sense. So we have a sparkling Junmai Daiginjo Nigori sake. So obviously if you buy this, open it carefully just like with champagne. And they actually, I'll pass around this fun little comic that they put in the bottle that explains how dangerous it is to open sparkling wine. So let's start with aside from water and rice, another big thing in sake is the yeast. And the yeast, it can be naturally occurring yeast, or it could be actually produced in a controlled environment, just like any yeast, and affect on the aroma of the final product. So to give you a quick example about yeast, a story I lived last year when I was with Chef Morimoto. We have a partnership with Rogue Brewery. We do a beer there, and later on we're going to do some spirits. But we go and we're having lunch with the brewmaster. This guy looks like Fidel Castro. He has the longest beard. He's wearing like overalls, and we're having lunch with him in the brewery. And they're saying, hey, why don't you try this beer? So the name of the beer is the Beard Beer. So we're tasting the beer, right? I was like, wow, this is really good, kind of musky. And they say, well, let us tell you a story now you tried it. They said, we were trying to get a yeast culture out of our farms, because they grow their own hops and whatnot, and we couldn't get one. So as a joke, they grabbed the swab, went to his beard, and sent the culture, and they actually got the culture out of the yeast, and they started making the beer out of it. So, not to say don't drink that, it's actually amazing, but that's an idea of how yeast works and how you can make a yeast. These days there's some breweries, going back to a serious note, some breweries that work with apple yeast. In the south, in Hiroshima, they're really famous for that one. It's taking me longer to open this than it took these guys to pour it, but there you go. So apple yeast, watermelon yeast, thank you sir, just to show them. Different kinds of yeast that affect in the final aroma and the nose. There's a lot of flower yeast, so if you grab like orchids, you can culture a yeast out of it, make a sake, beer, whatever you want out of it. And it's a pretty amazing part of it. The fourth part to make sake, the fourth main ingredient is koji, K-O-J-I. And koji, it's a mold. It's mold at first. And what it does, I mean, koji is found in a lot of things in Japan. Soy sauce has koji, miso soup, a lot of things. Shochu, which is a distilled spirit, it's made with the koji. And koji in this case, it acts as it starts transforming the rice into sugars to convert into alcohol. So the way sake is made is very different than wine. It's not just fermented, it's more like beer. You have a parallel fermentation happening. So you have, since you don't have a lot of sugars on the rice kernel, the koji comes here and helps it out, and then the yeast grabs it and takes it to the party and converts it into alcohol. So basically, in a few words, that's how it happens. And I'll give you a quick production on rice, right? You grab the rice, you pick it. The strains of rice that we're talking about are very different than the edible styles of rice. These ones are a little longer. They have a little more starch to them because you're polishing them away. So you grab the rice, you polish the rice. By polishing the rice, which used to be made by hand back a few hundred years ago, and now it's done with these machines that resemble like washers. So if you will, there's a band that goes up, polishes the rice, which the rice is very delicate. On the way down, it pulls it. So you can keep doing that. To make different styles like a Daiginjo, which is the highest polishing grade, it might take up to 3 days to get it to that level. So if you put in mind all the craft that goes into the production, right? So you take away the proteins, the starch out of the rice, the imperfections, if you will, and then you boil the rice lightly, you get a quick boil, and then you put 2 batches. One batch has the koji, the other one the yeast. You let them work for a little bit and then mix them, and then you get the fermentation going. And then there's multiple methods, but what you do at the end is let it sit for a while. 2 to 3 weeks is the shortest time, could be months, and then you strain it, and there's multiple ways to get the sake out. One very important one, a very cool one, it's called shizuku. Every time you see the name Shizuku with the name of the sake, it means they almost did like a tea bag, if you will. They grab the rice, put it in a strain, like a mesh, and let it drip. There's no force into it. So every time you see Shizuku, and you wonder why is this so much more expensive than the other ones, it's because all was extracted by just gravity, right? There's a producer that I'm a big fan of. It's called Ginja Shizuku. These guys are crazy. It's Takasago Brewery. What they do is they're in Hokkaido. They build an igloo every year. They put the bags and they put the mash in there, hang it inside the igloo and just let it drop. Outstanding. It's the most delicate style of sake you can have. It has a little tropical note, but it just glides up the tongue. It's very velvety and delicate. Pretty fun. So you have multiple things. The other word to look for is fune. F-U-N-E. It means box. So it's the most common way to extract the sake. It's like a bladder. You put it in a box and start closing it, and it comes down on 2 sides and it starts extracting the sake. So pretty fascinating in style, but if you ever see the name, which is usually attached to those, you know what it is. Cool? Alright, the 5th element on the sake production is alcohol. So there's a brewer's alcohol that can be made from grain, or it could be the sake that's been distilled. Any alcohol, it's added to it, and it creates a different style. Drier in style on the palate, on the nose a little more aromatic. And a quick story on how we ended up with that style. Well, they ended up. I was not born in Japan, unfortunately, but I feel like in my past life I was. So what they did, in the Second World War, there was a big shortage of rice in Japan, right? You have a war going on, you need to feed the troops and the families and everybody. So all this rice is being used for sake production. The government comes to the breweries, and I hope everybody can hear me still, I haven't busted that. The government comes to the breweries and says, okay, this is cool and all, we all need to get a little buzz on, especially in war times, but we gotta eat, we gotta feed all these people, so you have to cut your usage of the rice. So what they figured out is they add a little brewer's alcohol to it to increase the yields. And keep this in mind, they still water it down. So the final product is not higher alcohol. Because you see alcohol added, doesn't mean that it's going to be just rocket fuel at the end, right? They water it down, they bring it to the next level. A good point to touch on alcohol and sake. It can range from 7% on a sweet style, almost like Riesling, to 21-22% on a Genshu, which means undiluted, right? But normally, and actually the ones we're tasting tonight, they're around 15 to 16. That's the range. So at the end of the day, it's like a glass of California Zinfandel, if you will, right? Or a Syrah, kind of a richer style. But it's not gonna burn you. It's not like grappa. So we go back to the story on the sake. You add the brewer's alcohol. They realized that it makes a dry style on the palate, and then very aromatic on the nose. So when the ban was lifted and they said, fine, you can use the rice again, we're back in business, we're all good, some breweries decided to keep this style. And that is called Honjoso. H-O-N-J-O-Z-O. Every time you see Honjoso, it means they added the brewer's alcohol, so you can assume that style. Cool? So that is the 5th element that's allowed, and that's it. In other cases, you can, in some cases, you can add a little aromatic stuff like hibiscus, or you name it. They can do blueberry infusions, but those are not considered premium sake or in the realm of the higher end style, or clean, right? So levels of polish in the rice starts with Junmai or Honjoso. If it only says Honjoso, they only went, legally has to go 30% or more. Ginjo or Junmai Ginjo, it's 40%, so it means a little higher. You can assume it's going to be a little more crisp, cleaner style. And then the highest you can go, it's Dai Ginjo. DAI Dai Ginjo, that one's 50% or more. Although in some cases you'll see up to 65%. So that means they're taking away out of the grain of rice and leaving just the heart, which is called shinpaku. And the heart has all the amino acids. Every time you see Dai Ginjo, you'll see that it's the most expensive on the list. And a really cool side note on Japan and this craft is that they usually, unlike wine or other products, you will not see a bottle that's $1,000 if the craft didn't go into it. Like for instance, you can go plant a vineyard in California in this beautiful area and do amazing marketing and call it whatever you want and charge $1,000. Fine, somebody will buy, right? And you might be really successful. There's a lot of good examples. In Japan as a general, that rule doesn't apply. The culture, if you don't put the craft into it, if you don't have like 100-year-old water or rice strains or all these things, and if you didn't polish that much and put the time, they're not going to charge you that much. So a Junmai or Honjoso style is always going to be cheaper, 99% of the time. And cheaper doesn't mean better or worse. It's just a completely different style, right? We're going to try a little bit of food to try with this one, and let me explain this one. This one, knowing that, it's a Dai Ginjo, so these guys went ahead and polished as much as they can out of the grain of rice. And then they made a Nigori style. Nigori means they reintroduced the lees, which makes it cloudy. And then they added carbonation to it. So this is like 1% of the production in Japan of sake. This is very obscure. The producer is Dasai, DSSSI. And these guys are known as the Antinoris of Japan. These guys are always going against the grain, just like Antinori started with the Super Tuscans and all those things they're pushing against. And it's an amazing product. It's a party, it's pretty exciting. And ideally, go really well with these three dishes we're going to try. We have Chef Morimoto's staple, one of his most creative and fun dishes, the tuna pizza, which is a crispy flour tortilla, hoisin glaze, big-eyed tuna, anchovy aioli, micro cilantro, and it's pretty fun and crisp. It's got the texture. We have also a Kumamoto oyster with a little house-made ceviche sauce. And then we have the hamachi taco, which is yellowtail sashimi tossed in a yuzu koshu sauce with a little micro cilantro, guacamole, and a crispy wonton. And feel free to enjoy us as we talk. I'm just going to keep talking forever. Now, a note on Nigori. Nigori, believe it or not, the US is the biggest consumer of Nigori. Japan is super small. There's probably 10 or 20% consumed in Japan. All that's made pretty much is sent to the US, and we love it. Who hasn't gone to a sushi place and ordered the unfiltered sake and just feel at home, right? That some of us, our first taste with sake, that's how we relate it. It's a cloudy style, right? So keep that in mind. Nigori, it's the cloudy, and for Japanese people, it's usually something like a novelty, but it's not something that's always in a daily household. Cool? One more other thing I was going to mention on that note. Hot sake. Who has not tried hot sake before? Everybody has, right? So hot sake, that's always a question that I always come across. People ask me all the time at the restaurant or out or whatnot. And hot sake, in a way, it used to be done back a few hundred years ago when the quality and the technology wasn't there to create this final product that we have now that's a premium style. So the sake quality was almost pretty poor. Plus, besides that, the common person could not afford to buy good sake. So what you do is you heat it up, and I'll go a little bit this way. By heating up the sake, you take away some of those impurities. So it's the same thing as buying a cheaper bottle of Sauvignon Blanc or Pinot Grigio, and you put it in the freezer for a while, you drink it, it's like, wow, it's amazing, because you pretty much don't taste anything, you hide everything away. So that's the same idea with hot sake. You start with a lower style product with more impurities, cheaper if you will, although amazing, and then you heat it up, take all those away, and you have something you can drink every day, right? You don't have to break the piggy bank. Now, being that said, we get people all the time that come in and ask for a $300 bottle of Daiginjo, which now we know that it's the highest polishing grade, very elegant, and then they ask for it hot. So when that happens, obviously you're paying for an amazing product, and then you're heating it up and just killing it. So you're grabbing $300 and throwing them out the window. So I always tell guests, because I'm not going to say, I'm going to try to educate them, but I'm not going to come across arrogant or say, no, you don't know what you're doing. What I do, and I dare you to try this at home or whatever you like, grab one glass only, heat it up in boiling water, just dip it in there in a glass or aluminum for about 2-3 minutes, so you heat it up, and bring the other glass, this is what I do, bring the other glass cold to the table, and I tell the guests, feel free to try them both. This is the Daiginjo, this is heated, this is cold, and 99% of the time people try like, wow, absolutely, don't heat the rest up, just give it to me that way, because you get to see the difference, right? Although, if you're really craving a hot sake, which we all do at some point, and it's cold outside or whatever the case is, you buy a Junmai or Honjoso, which now we know it's lower grade of the polishing, so a little rougher on the edges, and you heat it up. And that way you have a final product. And don't get me wrong, there's a few sakes out there that really benefit from a little heat, even though they're still pretty good cold. So that's always a good point.